There's cause for concern looking at the state of the American economy right now. A new report this past week from the payroll processing firm ADP shows that private payrolls, data from ADP's client companies covering about 1/5 of all U.S. private sector workers, declined by 32,000 in the month of September. That's the biggest one-month drop in 2.5 years. ADP also revised its payroll numbers from August to a loss of 3,000 private sector jobs rather than an increase of 54,000 that was initially reported. Now, that's not a very complete picture of the economy. For a more complete picture, we should be turning to the government jobs report that's published monthly by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is an agency of the Department of Labor. Its surveys count workers across all non-farm, non-agricultural sectors, and that includes government workers, people who work in the public sector. That report usually comes out on the first Friday of each month, but it did not get released last week because of the ongoing federal government shutdown. This is the first time that BLS has delayed a monthly jobs report since 2013, and that happened during another shutdown. Now, even if the Bureau of Labor Statistics were still open, it doesn't currently have a leader running it, which is also a problem. Last week, President Trump withdrew his nomination of the conservative economist E.J. Antoni to head BLS, which leaves the Bureau leaderless following Trump's firing of the previous BLS leader, Erica McIntyre, after a disappointing jobs report in August. The president accused that report of being rigged to help him and to make him and his party look bad. Got a lot to unpack here. Joining me now to discuss is Justin Wolfers. He's a professor of economics and public policy at the University of Michigan. He's also a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution. He's the author of Principles of Economics, a textbook that helps students develop and apply economic intuition to their everyday decisions. It says on my paper here in brackets, Dr. Justin Wolfers, as if I haven't been calling you that, so I probably should. Dr. Wolfers, nice to have you back on the show. Justin, let's talk for a second. Every month we get this ADP report, and then we get the jobs report, and generally one is a harbinger of the other. We generally see similar trends. Once in a while, they're in different places, but there are trends. So that part worries me because we see a trend in the ADP report that suggests a further softening in the labor market. We don't know what happened in full jobs report, but the Fed's trying to make decisions about cutting interest rates, so that number's really, really important for them to have.
Yes. So a whole lot to unpack there, Ali. So one of them is, what's the best indicator of the economy? It's non-farm payrolls, exactly as you said in the intro. It's a really good indicator because it's about something we care about, which is jobs. It's measured using surveys of hundreds of thousands of people and firms, and it comes out in a really timely fashion, usually. We're at a funny inflection point right now. We're a month or two after the tariffs finally have really started to hit, and none of us really know what's going on. Now, this ADP report, you're right to say it generally follows the ups and downs of the better indicators. But actually, if you look, it normally comes out on a Thursday.
Yep.
The BLS report on a Friday. It turns out that what they say on a Thursday is not that useful. Later on, they revise their numbers. Turns out even the private sector revises numbers. And so I would say you're right to say this is definitely a negative signal, but I would suspect there's a little bit more noise there. So there's room to remain either a little bit more optimistic or alternatively agnostic about the state of the economy right now.
So this is important, though, because for people like you or me as a financial journalist or the Fed, this is why we want the data. Right? Because we can then interpret it. And I've spoken to people, very smart people, who say the U.S. economy is not in trouble right now. I've spoken to other people who say we're headed for a recession. These are just normal disagreements. People disagree about this stuff all the time, but at least they have some data to point to. Right now, we're missing a chunk of data.
Yes. Now, I have sort of some good news. I did a little bit of reporting last night. I talked to a former senior Obama official. Really, I talked to my better half, Betsy Stevenson. She used to be the chief economist of the Labor Department, and she was a member of Obama's CEA. And she remembers back in that last shutdown. And she tells me, in fact, that they saw the number. So what happened last time is actually very much what happened this time, which is the headline non-farm payrolls number probably is sitting on someone's desk at the BLS right now. So they know the number,
right,
including the BLS, the acting BLS commissioner. So her memory is that last time they told the White House what the number was, and they may even have walked it across town to tell the Fed what it is. Now, no one inside either of those administrations is going to tell you that they know what's going on, but there's actually a good chance that they know, even if the rest of us don't.
I'll take that. That's good, because the Fed, despite the fact that the president argues that it's a hyper-political organization, there are arguments to be made about whether the Fed can do its job better and the Bureau of Labor Statistics can do its job better. But fundamentally, these wonks at the Fed sit and look at all sorts of data. This is one piece of it. Let me ask you about this whole thing about Trump fires the head of the BLS, whose name nobody knew. Most people didn't even know such a job existed. Fires her. Puts this other guy in from the Heritage Foundation who can't even get a hearing on Capitol Hill. The Republicans who control the ability to have a confirmation hearing won't grant him one because even some of his conservative colleagues say it's not the right guy for the job. What's the implication of not having a director of the Bureau of Labor Statistics?
Yeah, this is really important. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics is actually one of the largest organizations hiring economists anywhere in the world. So this is a serious leadership position. Every economist around the world uses this BLS data as an input into thinking about the world, much as you do, Ali. And it's important that that's a well-run organization run by a serious statistician with real leadership chops. President Trump didn't like a number, so he fired the messenger. It's utterly inane and insane. And then Republicans started pretending that they cared about national statistics, and we all had to go along with that charade. It was nonsense. Of course, we can improve our statistics, and if we fund them properly, we'll be able to do so. So this was a guy, E.J. Antoni, who was being put forward to run the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is a guy who'd never run a bureau, didn't understand anything about labor, and the only thing he's ever done with statistics is misrepresent them. Add on to that, it turns out the bloke turns up on January 6th. He reckons he was just a tourist having a look around. I don't know about that. And there's a long history of racist, sexist, xenophobic tweets. And it became too much. I want to be clear here, not for the White House. President Trump still wanted the guy to go through, but Lisa Murkowski said, "Are you kidding me? This is the least qualified person in human history," which in this administration is really something. And so that's gone. So he is not going to be the commissioner. Now, it turns out there's only an acting commissioner right now, and much of the senior ranks of the BLS, like much of the federal government, is really empty right now, which is when you kneecap an administration, you make it hard for people to do their jobs. And that's a broader trend I worry deeply about.
Justin, thanks as always for being with us. Justin Wolfers is the professor of economics and public policy at the University of Michigan. Dr. Justin Wolfers, thank you for being here, sir. All right, quick